am Grady.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Sharice.
And welcome to Highlights, a show where we recap something like it's sports, even though it's not. This season, we are covering the 4th season of Dragula and all of its spooky glory. I love drag queens, especially when they fight each other, as we're going to discuss this week. With that being said, let's get right into it. Previously on Dragula, last week's episode was Monsters of Rock, which is a staple for the brand. Very much a tradition and definitely a favorite of not only the fans, but of the Boulets themselves. So getting right into the episode opens up with the usual cinematic intro tied to the Extermination. And they are in a strip club this week, full of stripper assassins who kill people with their thighs. I don't understand that, but I love the way the Boulets looked in this particular episode. It's probably the best I think I've ever seen their makeup be done, and I live for this look.
This was probably the weirdest like pre-film show we've seen so far. It wasn't terrible. It was just really, really weird. Their look was fierce though. Like the blending, everything, it was immaculate. And the wigs, I was dead. But I was really struggling to find the story and what they did.
That's so funny because I was totally living for it.
I loved it. It was a little weird because it looks like they somehow control the club, or they own it maybe, or they just control the stripper assassins. I don't really know. And also, I'm like, are they going there at noon because nobody's in there? Like, it looks like they haven't opened yet, but there's dollars in there. So I'm like, who's giving them the money if nobody's in there? Do they just leave them in there from the night before? I don't understand what's happening. So of course, this week for Monsters of Rock, the monsters are split into 2 teams to form 2 different rock bands where they will battle each other on the main stage during the floor show. The Boulets were very straight up in how they paired the teams, stating that they did it to ensure that drama ensued, that people got pissed off, and that it would make good TV. And I love how upfront they were about that. And boy, did it work. So, of course, all of the monsters had to serve not only their own Monsters of Rock looks, but also the looks that they wore while performing with their respective bands. First up is La Zavaleta. I loved this. Head to toe, the performance of it all, the entire thing. Absolutely lived for it.
I definitely like the look. I definitely like the performance. They have come a very long way since the first episode. I am super excited for this journey.
Yeah, this was so punk. Like, it was such a cool look. Their performance was spot on. Like, definitely on the rise. Complete 180 from what we thought before.
This was full Rockstar on tour. I bought it completely. It was great. Then we had Dahli. I actually really lived for this too. I thought this was really strong. And we'll talk more about Dahli later, but I did appreciate that it's kind of a different kind of vibe than Dahli's been putting out for the most part in most of what they've been doing. But I love this whole look. I love how almost satanic it looks. It's very metal.
What I liked most about this was that even like every time she brings a look, it's full theater. Like she definitely brought rock. She definitely brought the challenge, but every time she brings a character to life on stage, it's full immersive theater, and I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dahli is one of my tops. I love this look. I love this performance. Like, she is, I only had 2 top 2s from this week, and it was Dahli and then Hoso, and like, it was it for me.
Oh, well, I mean, I think you forgot Jade, but anyways,
It's true. I always forget about Jade for some reason.
But you can tell that Dahli like really conceptualized this whole thing. And this was actually Sharice's critique, right? The unclear concept. And that's something that Dahli does not struggle with. She walked out in this metal devil looking thing. And I know Dahli thought about this character from birth to present. Everything that went into it, fully realized.
It totally reminds me of like devil, but also like WWE wrestler, as strange as that
it does. Yeah, I see that.
There are so many different things, but all of it screams just rock to me, and just monsters of rock, monster of rock.
Really strong competitors right out the gate. And then that brings us to this, which was Bitter Betty. I didn't hate it, didn't love it as much as the first two. So I think in comparison to two really strong people who came out first, this felt like a dip to me, but I still liked it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it wasn't like absolutely terrible, but it also, again, was not to the caliber next to the absolute stellar performances that were also performing on stage.
No, for sure. It definitely, I felt like the look was textbook rock and not really monster, and kind of, yeah, I mean, it was rock. I got it. I just didn't feel like it was a mind-blowing, imaginative, like, oh my God kind of look or
Right.
performance.
Right. And I think there's the different, I get a vibe that like people like Zavaleta and Dahli, like they fully think about the ins and outs of who this person is that they're bringing to the stage. Where I get a vibe that like Bitter Betty was like, I need a Monsters of Rock look, Googled metal rock, and was like, oh, okay.
Right.
And then took it to somebody and took it to a couple people who made the outfit for her. And she just kind of put it on and went out there and was like, I'll do rock stuff. You know what I mean?
Or picked up the rocker bag costume from Spirit and was like, this'll work.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. I guess if you're in a jam, get it. Anyways. Yeah. Hoso, Terra, Toma, I liked it. It was a little scene kid and stuff like that, which by her own words was one of her references was the scene kids. And I kind of appreciate that because that's kind of like the modern kind of metal rock generation. It's like, you know, how a lot of like the modern teens kind of relate to rock and roll is through this kind of avenue as opposed to like the 80s metal rock. She did say she was going to do, she mentioned this on social media. She said she was going to do something that was actually more Korean rock, I think, and then was afraid the reference wouldn't read and it would come off as too different and it would end her up in the bottom. So she kind of Americanized it a bit as much as she could, but kept her aesthetic. And I actually really appreciated it. I actually liked how this looked.
I really like this look. We all know that Hoso is one of my favorites. It's not any surprise. I love the look. I love the performance. I love the little splashes of pink and purple. And not to spoil anything, but I felt like Jade's pink Monsters of Rock look was not it, whereas this kind of blended the pink and the girly and a little bit of scene kid punk with it.
Yeah, I think this kind of like took the notion that your perspective of rock is completely subjective and can be whatever rock means to you. It doesn't have to be that heavy metal genre that everyone else thinks it is. It's whatever rock is to you. And she executed it very, very well.
Exactly.
And I like that because part of my fear about this challenge is that because it's a tradition and they're going to do it every year, eventually we're just going to start seeing the same stuff over and over. And I feel like it's already kind of begun.
Exactly.
Especially when we get to the performance looks, right? And so, but the challenge itself doesn't really specify where you go. The boulets definitely, I think, like a certain period, right, in vein of it, and that's fine. But it seems like they're very open to whatever that means to the competitors as long as it's presented well. And so, especially because, you know, heavy metal and all that stuff, like it births so many avenues of rock and roll and what that means and all of these things. I would like to see different interpretations of that. Sigourney Beaver. I loved this so much. I loved this. I love the way she put her fans in the frickin' sparklers.
Yes.
Oh God, the way she like uses them as shields and stuff. Oh God, it was so good. And even the parts of her her dress that aren't metal but are made to look metal and all this stuff, and the way she blended all kinds of stuff. To me, this is kind of like what Hoso did, is she kind of put it through a different lens and put a bunch of different concepts of rock
it's like
together.
Rock opera, like
That's exactly what she went for.
absolutely stunning. It is stunning. She is stunning. The look is stunning. The performance was amazing. The only reason why I didn't write top 3 next to her name was because I still see no filth and no horror. Like there might be a little bit of horror with this look, but I know she can do glamour. It is completely obvious. She's beautiful.
But was it stunning?
Absolutely. I agree with that though. I don't see the filth and horror from it. But like I would love this in a doll, like to look at. Like the precision on the makeup on her face, like to be like even how small this image is that we're looking at, like you can see how like razor sharp the lines on her makeup are. That it's absolute artistry.
You can see spikes on her like on her costume. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's so good. But I agree with you, Sharice. I do want to see that marriage of glamour and horror a little more,
and not every single time, just one time.
Right. Just to show us you could do it, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love this. I wish I had this picture as a poster on my wall.
Right.
Okay, so Mary Cherry. I did think that the Elton John references were a little weird, and not that isn't rock, but I just felt like it didn't translate as strongly.
I honestly read that as a dig in the realm of this competition.
Well, it was. Yeah. It was. Because I think if you're going to do that, then you really need to sell the monster part of the challenge.
But is it weird that I don't even see Elton John in this?
It was the glasses. So rewatching it, like she had the Elton John glasses and she came out very like that. But the problem is when she was performing, trying to be the monster, she then deconstructed her outfit. She took the glasses off, she threw the wings off, she did all this stuff. And then she was just kind of rolling around as this orange thing with horns. And it didn't really go anywhere except down.
Okay, so I thought the look was okay until the wings were removed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, yeah. And then the gag was super weak. Are you really going to crush a can with your fist that's your boob? Because like that gag was weak. And as an audience member, I am so insulted.
Yeah. And I think Elton John is very much rock. He's very rock and roll, but he also does a lot of pop, right? So I think you need to really be careful about where you're going with that. So I think if she was really going to do that, she needed to kind of do what Hoso did and kind of blend it with some other things.
Yeah.
And so what Sigourney did, right?
The other.
Yes.
My problem with this look and all of her other looks is I think it has more to do with her personality as a performer. And that is that I think Mary Cherry is so full of herself that because she's so full of herself, she can't bring a character that isn't her to life because she is so just her. So it prevents her from bringing a character in a floor show to a fully actualized being because she's just so obsessed with being herself.
Yeah, she doesn't transform. And I would argue that when she stepped out and she had the Elton glasses on and the whole thing on, it could have worked depending on what she did. But then she just devolved back into herself. And it didn't do anything. Saint. Okay, so Saint I actually really enjoyed. I did have a problem with the handlebars flopping around because I think in some ways when she moves around it looks a little cheaper than I think I want it to. You know what I mean? It looks a little more crafty than I want it to. But and especially knowing what the concept that this is actually based on, I really love it. And I really liked how she performed. I definitely think she took the critiques to heart and performed a little bigger.
I really love this look. I like Poppy and Rachel True's critiques as judges were fantastic for Saint. And I agree with that spotlight in the middle. Like I like the handlebars, the whole motorcycle aspect of it was fantastic. I enjoyed their performance so much more than last week with the Wild West for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, this one was definitely a lot better than her Wild West one. Her silhouette, like just in this picture, looks really, really cool. Just for some reason, this wasn't my favorite look on the runway though.
Yeah,
but I thought the look was cool. It just wasn't my favorite. I did appreciate her performance though. Her performance was cool.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, the winner.
Yes. my queen. So Jade is doing this thing where she's becoming a little predictable to me, because I made a crack at the very beginning of the episode when they were given the challenge. I was like, watch, Jade's gonna come out in all pink, totally thinking she wasn't, and she totally did. And I was like, okay. That being said, I'm gonna back her up, and here's why. I like that she wasn't afraid to show some color in this, because I actually think that a lot of rock and roll artists really embrace color. And I think it's kind of a misconception that they don't. And it's kind of this problem where I'm worried that we're going to see the same thing over and over again, right? So I actually really appreciated it. I just wish she hadn't worn so much pink and stuff already in the competition.
This is so much more like Steven Tyler type of rock.
Yes.
And like, I really appreciate it to a certain extent. I felt like it was too much pink. I felt like she could have broken it up with something else, like another color or something.
Yeah.
The fringe, the hair, like it's pretty much textbook rock. I like the look. I like the performance. I'm a little tired of the props, but it wasn't like I didn't put her in the bottom this week for sure, which was kind of strange for me.
I think what concerned me, it wasn't that she it wasn't that she wore pink, because I agree with what you said, is that it was, you know, brave and controversial to wear pink, but it was why. Did you wear pink because that's just what you do and you weren't going to change that because that's your drag? Or did you wear pink because you thought you were thinking out of the box? If you were thinking out of the box and you wanted to do something different and show that there are different kinds of rock, then, you know, kudos to you. That's great. If you wore pink because you're the pink Power Ranger and that's just what you're going to do and that's what you've done all season so far,
Right.
I have more issue with that.
I will totally agree with that.
Yeah. And I think, you know, to me, this read very like almost like a evil gem in the holograms kind of a thing.
Right.
I really appreciate that. I think that's a really awesome thing to do. But she just came out as the pink Power Ranger for the Western Challenge before, and so it just feels like it's not as creative for her as I think it probably really was. I appreciated the transition between the gloss and then the smashing of the guitar took way too long, but I appreciated that concept.
Mm-hmm.
And it, you know, I really liked it. I just don't think it was enough, especially with what we've already seen with her.
True. And I totally have to agree. I did appreciate the gloss and the guitar and the random sniffing of the cocaine moments. I did appreciate that so much. It was freaking hilarious. I just, like I said, it was okay.
And I did appreciate that she was the only one who really like got destructive on stage at all, really, which is very rock. And they pointed that out. You know, that was a big highlight for her. But you know, I definitely, she's, to me, it's a little bit of the Bitter Betty problem where I just need her to kind of push it farther.
Yeah. Hopefully it means that she's learning to kind of do what Hoso does, where she takes the challenge and projects it through her lens of how she does her drag, but actually delivers on the challenge and doesn't just completely miss the mark altogether. Because I feel like that's what she's been doing, and for whatever reason has not been called out on it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like she's gotten a lot of passes for not really delivering, whereas I feel like she's needed to be in the bottom a lot more than she has been.
Yeah, and it makes me a little sad because for some reason it seems like the Boulets, based on them seeing her perform when they were out on tour and things like that and came across her, really actually expected her to be very strong in this competition. So I'm like, I don't know what she was doing out there, but they thought it was very Dragula and they thought she would probably go all the way. And I think that's why they're kind of frustrated with her now, because now that the camera's on, she's traditional Jade.
Right. But then their critiques don't really reflect that of her, though. Like, they don't, I feel like they're a lot harsher when they critique other people, and they don't say, like, you know, like when we critique her, we're just like, lose props, like, you know, but I don't know, they just seem to be very gentle with her, and I don't really understand that.
I really love Zenith. They just look like a real band to me, even in this just silhouette photo. I buy it that they, spent months rehearsing for their tour, like all this stuff. It just seemed so cohesive compared to Glam Rot.
All right, so let's get it out of the way. We all know Zenith is fantastic. Bravo. Literally, I've never heard Poppy's music before, but based on their performance, I would be willing to check it out. Not so much if Glam Rot was the one that I saw.
Yeah.
Like Glam Rot literally had every single thing that they needed to kick ass in this challenge. And every single person contributed negatively to their negative group experience.
Yeah. It just, what this looks to me, Glam Rot, it looks to me like it's almost like a no doubt problem. It's like, it's like, here's our star. And then the band's in the back there doing stuff. Check them out.
Because she does look like a star in this shot.
Yeah,
like,
and you could tell
wig,
like that was her
I love
intention.
that wig, by the way. Like she looks amazing.
Yeah, you could tell she started to the front of the stage and was like, I'm not going down with them. Look at me. And did her
But
thing.
honestly, after everything that like went down, like, and you're in a competition, I would be the same way. I'd be like, you know what? I'm just gonna do me then, because I've done, in my mind, everything I can do to try to make this happen. And if you're not gonna work with me, I'm just gonna make sure that I don't get sent home.
No, for sure. Honestly, for Glam Rot, like everybody noticed Sigourney Beaver. She was fantastic. I noticed Merrie Cherry because stuff bad kept happening. Her outfit was bad. The wig fell off. The shoes. What in the holy goodness?
I noticed that she was wearing the same shirt that she was wearing in the filming of the episode.
And then the other two were just literally lost. And if Merrie Cherry wasn't such a hot mess, I literally wouldn't have, she would have been lost too.
I don't believe for a second that Merrie Cherry ripping her cape off, by the way, was an accident.
Really?
Her guitar. I don't believe that for a second.
I am 100% in agreement with you, Zach. I definitely think that was on purpose. She was mad. She was mad about her outfit. She was just seriously just stomping across that stage.
That is one bitter cherry right there.
That being said, Zenith, of course, was named the winner of the Battle of the Bands, and Dahli was named winner of the challenge, and all of their concubines congratulated them on stage. That I'm sorry. I love this. That being said, of course, Glam Rot was the loser of the Battle of the Bands, and all four are up for extermination. They do make it a point to let Sigourney know that she's amazing and that she doesn't deserve to be there. And if she hadn't been with this particular band, she would not be there. That being said, they still make her do it anyway.
You know, like you said when we were watching it, I do think she needed to hear that.
So in addition to being told they're all up for extermination, the entire cast is asked who should go home. And every single person names Merrie Cherry because Merrie Cherry has been a pill, not only the entire competition, really, but the entire episode, as she complained backstage, blamed everybody else for her problems backstage and throughout the challenge, and even when receiving her critiques. And then when everybody states that she should go home because she's obviously the weakest link of them all right now, she has a meltdown about that. There's been a meltdown every episode. This week was Merrie Cherry. And, she said she was very brokenhearted, blah, 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 whatever her problem is, blamed everybody else for it.
She didn't think that Zenith was going to say her name. Whose name did they think that they were going to say?
And I'm sure, like, as a person in general, Merrie Cherry is fine. She's great, all this stuff. But in terms of this competition and what I've seen on camera and the episodes, I was pretty ready to, I was saying her name too. I was like, yeah, Merrie. You didn't ask me, but Merrie should go home. Which of course then leads to some fun stuff backstage afterwards. Where then the team not only has it out again backstage, but everybody kind of puts their input on the whole thing. So we get an actual extermination challenge this week as opposed to a mechanical bull in a bounce house.
Bull riding.
Yeah. And here's where I'm going to back up Jade once again. I know, I'm sorry. But I actually thought Jade handled this extermination really well. She really leaned into it. She had a great time, even when she was being shocked the hell out of herself. And it
shocking herself. She's like, this is fun.
Yeah.
She was literally the only person that giggled, and that's where I would have taken it too. Like, it would have just been so much that I would have just started giggling.
Yeah. That being said,
what a great shot.
This also needs to be a poster on my wall. And
it needs to be on a mug. It just says like Mondays.
Merrie Cherry, of course, ends up being exterminated and is the latest victim of the Thigh Master Hitman stripper. Such a weird extermination. But I think this was absolutely the correct way to go. All right, top tweets. Let's get into some news. This I just really wanted to mention because I thought it was kind of interesting, but Bitter Betty's coat, which was only briefly shown in the floor show, she took it off like immediately, when I think she actually probably should have served it a little bit, because I actually think the coat itself was really great. She had some other photos that really showed it off, and I was like, I wish I'd seen that instead of just the leotard you rolled around in, because it looked really great. But it was made by Princess, who was on Drag Race Season 4, and was known for kind of doing things a little more punk rock with her looks, which landed her in hot water a bit, even though RuPaul eventually would go on to do similar looks herself, which I thought was also very interesting. It tends to get brought up sometimes. Princess is also one of the people that fans kind of think should maybe make the transition to Dragula and would potentially do really well there. And I am open to that as well. Okay, we all know what we really want to talk about. Okay, so
here we go.
I know we have so much tea. We haven't had any hot tea, and I'm like, do I need to rename this section? Because there's like been no drama really that warrants like further discussion. But boy, did this.
And here we go.
Exactly. Oh my God. Okay, so as soon as the episode began, and to Merrie Cherry's defense, you know, people on social media, especially Twitter, tend to be a little ridiculous. So I think she got a lot of like extra hate and with some choice phrases and words and insults that probably didn't need to go her way. But a lot of people decided on Twitter, as they commented about the episode, to back up Sigourney, which led to Merrie Cherry unleashing a full thread of tweets. But a lot of the critiques that the fans are having is that Sigourney seems to be targeted as kind of the first cisgendered AFAB queen competing, and feel like there's a little bit of a bias there against her in terms of some of the other competitors, Merrie Cherry included. I don't know about that, depending on what we're discussing. But Merrie Cherry seemed to be not having it. So she decided to go on a tirade complaining about everything she's done for women and all of this stuff, which is interesting. She stated that before shooting the group challenge, Jade told Merrie that Sigourney had said that they were planning on acting like victims to make sure, or that they were planning to act like a victim to make sure that Merrie and Betty looked bad, and was upset And that Jade had also mentioned that if Merrie said anything about that on camera, Jade would also deny it on camera. Which then Bitter Betty made her own post and attaching Merrie's tweet to her own and said it was true. And that another monster had actually witnessed the conversation, but did not want to bring that monster into the drama if they didn't want to be there. And so the argument between Jade and Merrie was essentially because of that. And it ended up hurting their band a lot, according to Betty. But she said that she did, in fact, take Jade's side in the matter and asked Merrie to kind of just let it go, I think for the sake of the challenge. But that Merrie was her bestie at the house and that she was telling her to lay off Sigourney and all of these things. So this to me, I don't know. It was like Betty trying to take the middle road, but still kind of siding with Merrie.
She did that in the episode too, where it's like she tried to play peacekeeper at one point and then did a complete 180 like 5 minutes later. And it's like, girl, what lane are you in?
It was weird though. She tried to play peacekeeper and then totally hyped Merrie Cherry up.
Betty said she knew how people would react to it and didn't want Merrie to get all the hate when it aired and things like that. But said, here we are. And then decided to challenge Sigourney's praise for carrying the team a little bit by saying that the skirt Sigourney made should have taken 2 hours, not 2 days. That she even told her to like chop it up at the bottom to save time, was making suggestions. Sigourney refused, did whatever she wanted anyway, wasted a bunch of time, and then spent the entire second day with the other team instead of hanging out with her own team at all. But also said that for the record, she didn't think Jade was really stirring the pot on purpose by telling Merrie what, Sigourney was planning to do in terms of playing the victim, but just ended up sticking her foot in her mouth. Didn't really feel like it was that big of a deal or that deep.
But why wasn't this tweet mentioned at the beginning, though, when it was such a big, hot effing deal? Like, I don't think Jade was doing it on purpose, but that's totally the way you made it sound 3 tweets ago.
Right. Like, a lot of this just doesn't add up. Like, if that was really the case, then that's the issue. Like, and that's what needs to be talked about. And if it only takes 2 hours to make a skirt, then you make it.
Right. I know.
No, for sure. I was totally going to say, well, if you just wanted to like not hem it and just chop the bottom off, and why don't you tell her like, hey girl, I'll get this. Why don't you get, the rest of the performance together? Or why don't you do the wig for somebody? Since obviously Merrie Cherry had a problem with hers.
Right. And if like, again, this is not how you resolve conflict, and this is probably not the right way to like deal with this. But if I just had like multiple people blow up at me, and like especially someone with a toxic personality like Merrie Cherry, like we saw on the episode, I'm not going to elect to spend 2 days with them. I'm probably going to go spend 2 days with people who are going to help me calm down and relax before a challenge that's probably going to decide whether or not I go home.
What's interesting though is then how Sigourney and Jade respond to all of this blowing up on Twitter, which is that they don't. All Jade tweets out is that Sigourney deserves love and support.
I love this, by the way, that they don't even mention it.
Sigourney also took a similar route and just said thanked everybody for the love and support, didn't mention why, and just said it's been very healing to have her experiences seen and validated, and said, please do not send hate to another competitor, because she didn't want Merrie Cherry to get attacked, even though Betty and Merrie were totally gaslighting their supporters to go attack Sigourney.
But I still agree with this. I totally this is fantastic.
And to me, all this really does is underline the difference in professionalism between Merrie, Betty, and honestly Jade and Sigourney.
Yeah.
It then prompted the Boulets actually to issue a statement on all platforms.
So I saw the I saw the Boulet brothers statement and literally don't have Twitter, so I didn't see any of the rest of this stuff go down. And I was just like, oh my gosh, something happened. Oh my gosh, going for fallout. Oh my god.
Let's get into the scoreboard. As always, these are the competitors we started with, and here's who we have left. Okay, so Extermination Order Merrie Cherry has now passed on. She's now in 8th place. People up for Extermination. Bitter Betty now officially has the worst stats of everybody in the competition. She's now the bottom B. She's been up for Extermination 2 times, where Zavaleta, Saint, Jade, and Sigourney have all been up for Extermination 1 time. Challenge wins. We now have 3 people in the lead for 3 people essentially that are top competitors, all with the same stats. 1 challenge win under their belt, as Dahli now enters the scoreboard with a challenge win and has won also a comic book of her Monsters of Rock character in the upcoming issue of Heavy Metal magazine.
I know, when Jade just swoops in and takes it all.
Shut your mouth.
Exactly. I think she's a sleeper. I think she's going to come out of nowhere.
No, she's like literally asleep.
This week's episode is Ghost Ship Glamour, where the competitors have to put together looks based on a ghoulish ghost ship look and also perform a lip sync performance to the Boulet Brothers' new single, Wicked Love, I believe is what it's called. But with that being said, make sure you subscribe today. And as always,
Thank you for watching highlights.
and we'll see you next time.